Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from one of Spain's most revered saints, Saint Teresa of Avila, a spirited doctor of the Church. Join me, Amy Thomas, once a week as we read from Saint Teresa's book, The Interior Castle. Hello, Catholic pilgrims. Welcome to the 4th chapter of the 5th mansion. This will be the final chapter in this mansion. And in this last chapter of the 5th mansion, we will be getting further explanations of the same subject that we have been talking about, meaning that special divine union with God. And St. Teresa gives some very real and honest commentary about this at the beginning of the chapter, which made me laugh. Again, it's a good look at her personality and how she didn't really foresee her writings getting published for people around the world. She also will talk about the importance of being on one's guard, as the devil eagerly desires to turn souls back from the right path. A lot of what we will read about today covers betrothals and marriage. We know that in the Bible, marriage is between a man and a woman, and it is often used as an analogy for the relationship with God and His church, sometimes God and His followers, etc. So when we get to that part, we really need to pay close attention as she switches between spousal marriage and spiritual marriage with God pretty frequently. So we have to read it carefully in order to get exactly what she's talking about. Our readings today are from the 5th mansion, Chapter 4, Numbers 1 through 3. And before we begin, let's hear from Chrism Press, this year's sponsor. If you're a true lover of science fiction, you can't miss Mark Maker. In a world where tattoos define identity, Markel Sirix has sworn to paint the truth. But when he becomes an accomplice in the banishment of an innocent man, he's forced to confront the misery of the outcasts. Mary Jessica Woods has created a world that's both vivid and intricate, full of poignantly real characters and deep, lingering themes. Go to chrismpress.com to purchase your copy, and if you use the code PILGRIM15, you get 15% off your first order. Okay, let's see what today's readings are all about. You appear anxious to know what has become of the little dove and where she obtains rest, since obviously she can find it neither in spiritual consolations nor in earthly pleasures, but takes a higher flight. I cannot tell you until we come to the last mansion. God grant I may remember or have leisure to write it. It is nearly 5 months since I began this work, and as my head is too weak to read it again, no doubt it will be very disconnected and full of repetitions. However, as it is only for my sisters, that will matter little. Yet I should like to express myself more fully about the prayer of union, and will make use to the best of my scanty wits of a comparison. Later on we will speak of the little butterfly, which is never still, for it can find no true repose, yet always fertile, doing good both to itself and others. You have often heard that God spiritually espouses souls. May He be praised for His mercy in thus humbling Himself so utterly. Though but a homely comparison, yet I can find nothing better to express my meaning than the sacrament of matrimony, although the two things are very different. In divine union, everything is spiritual and far removed from anything corporeal. All the joys our Lord gives, and the mutual delight felt in it being celestial, and very unlike human marriage, which it excels 1,000 times. Here all is love united to love. Its operations are more pure, refined, and sweet than can be described, though our Lord knows how to make the soul sensible of them. I think this union does not attain as far as the spiritual espousals, but resembles the preliminaries that take place when two people are contemplating a betrothal. Their suitability and willingness for the alliance are first discussed. Then they may be allowed to see one another sometime so as to come to a decision. Thus it is in the spiritual espousals. When the preliminary agreement has been made, and the soul thoroughly understands what great advantages she will gain, having resolved to fulfill the will of her spouse in all things, and to do all she can to please him, His Majesty, who knows well whether this is so in reality, wishes in return to gratify his bride. He therefore bestows his favor upon her, visits her, and draws her into his presence, as he wishes her to know him better. We might compare the prayer of union to a visit, for it lasts but a very little while. There is no longer any question of deliberation, but the soul in a secret manner sees to what a bridegroom it is betrothed. The senses and faculties could not in 1,000 years gain the knowledge thus imparted in a very short time. The spouse, being who he is, leaves the soul far more deserving of completing the espousals, as we may call them. The enamored soul, in its love for him, makes every effort to prevent their being frustrated. Should it grow neglectful and set its affections on anything except our Lord, it will forfeit everything. This loss is as great as are the favors the soul has continually received, which are precious beyond description. O Christian souls, you whom God has brought thus far, I implore you, for his dear sake, not to grow careless, but to avoid all occasions of sin. You are not strong enough yet to undergo temptation, as you will be after the espousals which take place in the next mansion. Here the betrothed are, as they say, only acquainted by sight, and the devil will spare no pains to oppose and prevent their nuptials. Afterwards, when he sees the bride is wholly given to her bridegroom, he is afraid to interfere, having learnt by experience that if he molests her, while he loses much, she will gain greatly in merit. We see here today a glimpse again into St. Teresa's personality in the first part of our readings. She says, quote, "It is nearly 5 months since I began this work, and as my head is too weak to read it again, no doubt it will be very disconnected and full of repetitions. However, as it is only for my sisters, that will matter little." Unquote. Even saints get tired and weak and don't want to edit their work. I understand that very much. I really do. St. Teresa goes on to compare the sacrament of matrimony to God spiritually espousing himself to a soul. Now, she says there's a lot of differences in them, and she focuses mainly on the preliminaries of the sacrament of matrimony. She hasn't quite gotten into the actual nuptials yet. And I would imagine that a lot of people aren't quite sure what to do with this image of God espousing himself to humans. And I would imagine for men, it's even harder to kind of wrap your mind around. And also, when we think of human matrimony, we think of spousal intimacy. And that clouds our thoughts when thinking about being espoused to God. There's great intimacy in both, yes, but with God, there's nothing of a sexual nature. As St. Teresa tells us, everything is spiritual, nothing is corporal. I'm also willing to bet that a lot of people, when they think of heaven, think of being with their spouse in heaven. I know I do. I think that's pretty natural, though we will not be given in marriage in heaven because the sacrament won't be needed. Does that mean we will be strangers to our spouses? No, of course not. In fact, we will have a fuller, deeper love with them because there will be no sin or sorrow attached to our relationship. However, we won't be living with our spouse in a house where we pass eternity by together. And because our human minds can't quite conceive of heaven and all its wonders, we conjure up the best thing we can, and that is usually being reunited with our loved ones. There will be that, but in heaven, intimacy will be different, very different. In heaven, divine union is where, quote, love is united to love. Its operations are more pure, refined, and sweet. They can be described, unquote. Even here on earth, we can achieve this divine union with God, as St. Teresa has been showing us, though it will be brief and not long-lasting, as it will be in heaven. Now, at the time of this podcast, I'm getting ready to celebrate 22 years of marriage. When my husband and I were first dating and getting to know each other, we wanted to impress each other, as all new couples want to do. You show your best side, you try to be overly appealing to their senses. You are trying to show them that you are a suitable partner. Now, it didn't take long for my husband and me to realize that we wanted to be with each other for life. As St. Teresa says, quote, "When the preliminary agreement has been made and the soul thoroughly understands what great advantages she will gain," unquote, you enter into the engagement. For the couple, you find that you love each other and you want to start a life together. And you see the advantages of having this person in your life till death do you part. Thinking about entering into the spiritual life, it's pretty synonymous. You get to know God through prayer, reading His Word, going to church more, and in all of that, you realize that it will be an advantage to pursue a relationship with Him, and you want to do that. When both relationships are new, thinking of the engaged couple and on the spiritual side, like a convert or a revert, everything feels fresh and exciting. Anyone who has been married for a good bit knows that freshness and that honeymoon phase wears off. Masks come off and you start to see each other in all your humanness, faults and all. Annoyances spring up, and temptations to unforgiveness and anger arise. Anyone who has been at the spiritual life for a while knows that staying united to God has its ups and downs as well. Not because God has done anything wrong, but because of us and our human nature. As St. Teresa says of the soul, quote, "Should it grow neglectful and set its affections on anything except our Lord, it will forfeit everything. This loss is as great as are the favors the soul has continually received, which are precious beyond description," unquote. Now, if you are someone who has been touched by divorce, you know what a great loss that is. My parents divorced after 31 years of marriage. I was 30 years old. Having my family together was precious to me. And that loss is a deep wound and will continue to be. Having God in your life and then losing a relationship with Him because of our own neglect or idolization of something else is immensely devastating. It's earth-shattering, and I know this well. And with our marriages, our religious vows, or with our relationship with God, we must, quote, "not grow careless, but avoid all occasions of sin," unquote. We must remember to be as committed and dedicated as we envisioned ourselves when we first started out on a betrothal with our spouse or in our spiritual union with God. We will never regret holding tight to our resolve to, quote, "fulfill the will of our spouse," unquote. And by that, St. Teresa means God. That will be all for today, Catholic pilgrims. There are many things in this world that will try to break up our marriage to our spouse and also our union with God. And we can't ever give ourselves over to those interferences. So I pray that you have a good rest of your day. I will see you back here soon. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.